So this will be a long one. You can skip down to the problem section or read the whole for background and context, which I suggest, but it's long. Background. My wife and I got together about a little over 3 years ago. We have both been promiscuous people in our adult lives. My past: I did not become sexual active until I was 18. I moved from a small town in the south to big city California for work, military, and lived there for about 5 years. Throughout those years I would regularly date, Tinder, dating apps, etc. Looking for love in all the wrong places with misguided intentions of what I was truly seeking. True intimacy. Most likely stemming from my childhood of multiple mother figures, abandonment, flirtatious father with anger issues, etc. Add that together with the California dating scene and no real family guidance, I had no recipe for happiness. Liking the women that didn't want me and not liking the women that did. After a nasty catfish period by someone, I found brief respite in a relationship of almost a year. I would consider myself decent looking, smart, and determined. Though I can be stubborn, insensitive, and standoffish, so I wasn't always the easiest to deal with. She was 19 to 20 at the time. We cared for each other deeply, probably loved each other, but as I can look back now, my own hang-ups and insecurities would take hold, and I would look for the quickest exit ramp when it came up. A great opportunity at work presented itself that would involve me being gone for 2 months, and if it went well would involve me being gone a lot for training and work. My girlfriend at the time did not support me when I broke the news that I wanted to do it, at least initially. Instead of talking it out like a normal person, after a month or so I ended it. Not because of her in hindsight, but because I lacked the maturity to see how great she was and the ability to talk problems out as couples should. All went well, and I got the job and moved to the East Coast. During that time period after the relationship, I continued to date. Rejection would hurt when it happened. Eventually, and I'm ashamed to admit it, I started occasionally visiting less than legit massage places. Also, porn was a prevalent thing all my life, like most men my generation. I never visited places like those before, during the relationship, and up until that point I had always been faithful to whoever I was with. But now, in my loneliness from pushing the one woman who loved me in my life at that point away, I started to form a bad coping skill. Whenever I did, I would feel dirty and tell myself never again. Nothing ever went past hand stuff. Needless to say, I fell off the righteous path. I see now they were negative coping mechanisms for my childhood and probably had some inklings of transference. It didn't happen often, but I did it when I was ghosted after sex or did not get any, which I can see how I coped with it was not healthy, and I was looking for the wrong thing by seeking sex from women from the start. I was having a successful career, but my dating life was not what I wanted it to be. I can see now, looking back, what I was looking for was safety, love, and true intimacy, and between the porn, past childhood hurts, and my forming bad habits, it would not lead me to it. That is who I was when I met my wife. Wife's background: she grew up with her own family issues, some of them sexual trauma related from childhood. She carried that into her early teen years, and was very sexual active from that age, pursuing older men. She got to a point in her teen years where she would cut herself. Like deep cuts. That has left some scars over 2 inches wide and 5 inches across. All over her legs. She has tried to cover them up with tattoos as the years have gone by, so heavily tattooed over her body. When I met her, I didn't judge her for them. We all have our hang-ups, but she reassured me she got all the counseling during her teens to get over it. She is a very beautiful, smart, intelligent, and humorous woman. Though she is also spiteful, stubborn, jealous, and a bit of a gossip. Her parents are kind of like ostriches and only acknowledge problems once they are too late, so they threw money at it. Mine just causes trouble. Both her mother, my birth, and stepmother, I have had 2 steps, were alcoholics. Her dad was military and always deployed, so she has abandonment issues. So she has had her fair share of roughness. She has had many relationships, flings, poly at one point, and a few that were not good. One, she was engaged and was cheated on constantly. She forgave him every time until she didn't. Another, the biggest one before me, she was in college and was on a good career path when she got knocked up. He was very erratic about it and was hot and cold. Eventually, as per what she says, he beat her while she was pregnant. When he realized what he did, beat the crap out of himself with a pipe, and when the cops showed up, somehow she ended up going to jail. He either knew someone or was a good liar, she says, IDK. She then broke it off with him after that, and her parents managed to get him cut out completely through the legal system so he wouldn't be involved in the child's life. I say good riddance for a man who would try to end his child's life. She had the baby, who was a boy, and she then moved to a different county for a while and worked as a sexual victims advocate. When she came to the States, we got together. Our relationship, my perspective, I wasn't exclusive with her until our second date, at which point we slept together, which became a foundation for our relationship. She sees it differently. Counts when we would occasionally chat on the phone as part of our dating. I don't, because we were in different countries, and I never pledged anything to her, let alone have met her in person at that time, which after my catfish experience always I did. It was like general talking and getting to know each other. After she came back, we went on 2 dates in 2 days. She brought her son, who loved me right away, and I didn't mind. He was a very sweet and smart kid for his age, over 1, and I didn't hold it against her that she was a mom. Actually, it was one of the reasons I fell for her and still love her. She is a great mom who does everything for her kids and beats herself up when she feels like she falls short. I have always told her that if I could have had a mom like her, I would. I see the mom issues here and have been able to self-identify them now. So we hooked up on our second date and were exclusive from there. I told her ahead of time how busy my work is and how I will always be gone. She said she understood and would support me. In reality, I was always putting out emotional fires when I left and didn't have peace like she promised. Our relationship came to a decision point quickly when she was breaking down from having to work a demanding job, work on her master's, and raise a kid by herself. I offered for her to move in together, which would reduce living expenses, allow her to quit and focus on her master's, psychology major, and she could have cheaper and better daycare where we were located. So we did after about 3 months being together. Needless to say, the transition was rough for me. I went from a very single dude in a relationship to being a father figure and raising a kid who was not mine with no help from the real father and providing. A lot of fights and arguments about child rearing, relationship insecurities, etc. We could be like fire and oil and have been most of our relationship. Fights 80% of the time with 20% peace. This would further elevate when we had an external crisis. My parents did not like her from the start, which also didn't help. I would stand by her side though and defend her cause they were unjustified. So we continued like this, learning about each other on the fly while raising a family. She dropped the bombshell on me. She had a condition to a degree where she couldn't have more kids. That was unexpected, since you usually say that up front, and not once you are living together. I always wanted a kid of my own. So I took that on the chin and told her it didn't matter because she already had one, but it did bother me. What was I going to do though? We were already living together. We ended up living with her parents because of weather damage to our property at some point and lived with them for 6 months, then decided to get married cause we loved each other and were bleeding money, and getting married would help with that, military. That entire time I was faithful, except for porn, which she didn't say much when we were dating, and I didn't watch it much because we were sexual active, but once we got married it became a problem for her once she caught me when I was alone and she was sleeping and didn't wake up when I petitioned her. I was not receptive to her feelings when she brought it up because it was 180 from how she portrayed it prior to putting on the ring, and I couldn't see that it is becoming a public health crisis like I do now. I was surrounded by dudes who thought it was normal, and while I don't fault anyone who does watch it, I realize it is unhealthy and detracts away from true intimacy now. Other than that, spat all was fine more or less except for the constant butting heads. She is the type to need 5 days to process and get over one argument, and I am the kind who wants to extend the olive branch and get over 5 minutes later. My child's home life had enough arguing. Through our whole relationship up until this point, she never wanted to know my past with women. I had tried to tell her multiple times to open up to her, and she would shut me down. She wanted me to regard her as the only woman ever in my life. I would always listen to her about her past and ask questions, especially her poly relationship, and I accepted her for it and never held it against her. I can't say that I ever felt the same in return. Had she let me, I'm sure she would have seen my dark side. I'm sure I would have realized the dangers of it. I should have overrode her and told her my dark side anyway, but I felt judged and shamed. She didn't want to know my ugly. So I kept it to myself, not thinking it would ever need to be relevant cause I wasn't going to do it anymore and I had never acted up in a relationship. The ugly resurfaced. I went away for work when we were engaged and she suggested I have a bachelor's party. I didn't really want one, but I was with my buddies there, and we got to talking, and we were close to Vegas, so we decided to do it. Once I told her where we were going, she flew off the wall on me, and said I was going to cheat on her, etc. Which, on a side note, she would constantly crap on my job, that all the dudes cheat in it, and make me feel insecure and not trusted. We got into a fight because she was the one who suggested it in the first place. Welp, we ended up going cause I was pissed and enabled by my friends. We go have a good time, drink all day, and then wind up at a strip club. I am pretty tanked at this point and make the stupid decision to go into a private room. Totally in my warped sense of mind between alcohol, spite, lust, hurt, and driven by the looming concept of marriage. I don't have my pants down, but over the top the stripper ends up fondling my thing, and I try to put it on, but I'm drunk, can't find the hole and pretty sure she has something blocking the entrance, and she doesn't let me anyway. At that point I roll off to the side and she talks about life for a bit, and I leave with my friends. In essence, not what one would consider sex. The front door was knocked on for about 5 seconds, but no one was home, no release, etc. Unfaithful, yes, I agree. Once I sober up, I realize how stupid I was and how much of a mistake that I made. Then I go into the train of thought that I will never do it again, and I can't tell her because she is not a forgiving woman. And she isn't, she holds on to the smallest slights. So I hid it and I lied. Shame and guilt consumed me, and I promised myself to never do it again. When questioned, I lied. I was wrong and I see that. We got married. It was a nice ceremony and she looked stunning. I wasn't so bad myself. Though I remember when we said our vows how I felt more like I was reciting them than feeling them. Probably a combination of my guilt, and how disconnected from trust we were already. Both of our doings. Life moved on. She wanted to move out of her parents, so I took out a loan and bought us a brand new house. I am the full-time provider at this point. She was still working on her degree and raising my stepson, not adopted. More fighting and bickering. Some good memories too. Like I said, it was an 80/20 split. Sex was a big thing, I feel like, that held us together. We were very compatible. The problem. Then I have to deploy, and this is where the nut of the problem happens. We had planned a barbecue with 3 of my buddies for work. It ended up where I deployed sooner than expected and wouldn't be able to be there, so I told them to still have it and keep my wife company. These are guys I would have trusted with my life. What I was told by my wife and good friend, 30M, that the other 2 guys bailed, but they still had dinner and chatted and had a good time. That was all I needed to hear, and I was happy. I had my mind on deployment after all. Asterisk, keep this in mind. Fast forward halfway through deployment and of course we are fighting, and she brings up the fact that I occasionally watch porn, and I was still in the mindset of thinking it was normal to do that. She told me if I didn't stop that we would get a divorce. So I told her I would do it. And I managed for a while to step down bit by bit and do it less and less. But you really don't know how dependent on it you are until you quit, especially on deployment where you can't have sex with your wife. Then one of the guys I worked with took me on some errands, and we stopped at a massage place. It was a fairly safe deployment area. I ended up going in there with him, and that was my first bad decision considering my history. I was initially just going to get a normal one, but I should have known myself better. I ended up with the hand service. Needless to say, I caved 2 more times after that in quick succession. I was in such a twisted reality bubble of my own creation. I just broke my own promise not once, but 3 times. And of course I hit it with the same twisted mentality that I could not mess up again. I realize more than ever nowadays how broke I was and how the truth sets you free. Fast forward after the deployment. I get back. We are all lovely because I'm home, and we decide to get pregnant. Oh, she ended up getting surgery, so she was super fertile now, and we didn't want to waste it. Part 2. Found out my wife had an affair while trying to patch things up with her. Now our dynamic has always been, like I said, 80% fighting/bickering and 20% peace. Well, pregnancy amplified that 10x. She was not kind during it, though it was a rough pregnancy for her physically, so I understand that to an extent. Of course, I have to go away again for training. Towards the end of it, I went out with some of the dudes there to get some wings and beer. They ended up bar hopping and I tagged along. I got drunk and I ended up talking way too much to some chick, call her Sally. She grabbed my butt, I grabbed hers, we kissed twice, and then, thankful before it escalated any further, we left in different vehicles, and she ended up going back to her place with a couple of my friends there, and I ended up getting ditched. Which I am eternally grateful for, by God now. Though I am ashamed to admit I had texted her a few times the next day in hopes who knows what. All I knew was that I was getting attention from someone that didn't hate my guts every 10 minutes, and it was nice. It was wrong of me, and is a selfish line of thinking. I stopped texting her and blocked her. I come home a couple days later and my wife goes through my phone and sees that I had some leftover text and confronts me about it. Getting on the path, she does it real methodically. She makes me a great breakfast that she normally doesn't do, and is very kind and nice. And then when I am done, she hits me with it and confronts me. I initially panicked and denied, and then she persisted, and I decided enough is enough and I started to come clean. Regretfully, not all at once. I ended up trickle-truthing everything in the entirety of this story over the next couple months. I'm in and out of the house. Bouncing from place to place, it is terrible. I'm racked with guilt. I cry every night and don't sleep. I messed up so bad and should have been a better husband and father. I hate myself. I still do to an extent. Asterisk, she tells me how she has hung out with guys without telling me before during our relationship, drank alcohol, and never did anything, and uses that as a reason why I am trash and can't keep it in my pants. Completely ignoring when I bring up the fact she never told me about those events. Finally, after lots of money on counseling, we have a full disclosure. I put everything down on paper and give her my entire sexual history before and during our relationship. Every inch of my ugly down on paper. It was like 20 pages single-spaced with charts and such. Not because it was extensive, but I spared very little detail. I used a workbook she gave me. I also wrote her several apologies and her parents one, and I read it to them in person, and we all broke down crying. So for the record, I have never outright slept with someone or had an affair, emotional or physical. Sexual misconduct, but not sleeping with someone. I have owned this over and over with her, and she has always kept pushing like I have more to admit to her even after all the disclosure. Asterisk, now the day before disclosure she breaks down crying. She says that since I am being honest and coming clean that she wants to be honest with me. I'm like, okay, not expecting this. She tells me that the day of the barbecue my buddy had come over and brought alcohol. The other guys didn't show. They drank and had dinner. He then emotionally manipulated her, saying all kinds of things like I'm going to die, etc. He then tried to kiss her, and she said no. Put him on the couch cause they were drunk, and she went upstairs to bed. He then came in the middle of the night and had sex with her against her will. She was blackout drunk and thought it was me and couldn't get up. The next morning he left and she showered, and he came back and told her to never tell me, because it would ruin the work dynamic, etc., so she kept it from me for over a year. She planned to keep it from me for many more years. Of course I try to be understanding. She has me on my own witch trial, and it is a very tender situation, and I'm seeking forgiveness. If what she says is true, then I have to be understanding and not grill her for details, which I didn't. She told me not to confront him or say anything. She would do it on her time. When disclosure day came, it went horrible. I spent most of the time out of the room, and she hated how I worded everything even though it was the exact same thing I told her verbally. I used more professional language than smut language as per the book. The counselors were all there to help, but she didn't care. I then went and did a polygraph. I didn't pass or fail. Undetermined, this also didn't help, but I know why. He asked me 6 vague and general questions, and I had told her everything about me, my past, and the recent woman, but the poly guy asked if I had told her everything in general. I thought it was going to be all about me. I know that Sally went back with some other guy, and he confided in me that she kissed him. Considering how much of the ringer I was being put through, I did not want to put that guy in the same crosshairs, and I wasn't even there, so I couldn't confirm. I know for a fact that is what hung me up. She accuses me of giving her STD symptoms and to come clean about having sex with Sally. Which I can't because I never went home with her. When I press her for details, she just says symptoms. I get tested on 4 different occasions in 5 months and come back clean every time. I also want to point out how dangerous and irresponsible the behavior I did have was, and recognize that and beat myself up every day about it. Including the fact that it could have affected our daughter. I am so regretful over that. We have our beautiful baby girl, and I use it as the catalyst for my change even more. I am there for my wife as much as she will let me. Taking care of the baby, our son. Months go by and I am trying everything to make amends and be a good husband and father, even through all the verbal and emotional berating she keeps laying on me. I have to because I recognize I owe her that. I'm in and out of the house constantly. I have given her full access to my emails, phone, bank, geo-tracking, checking in every time I step out the door. Constantly communicating above and beyond the normal range. I go and donate plasma for months to help our finances and make atonement for the family money I spent on my vice. Getting scars in the process. I join church groups, find one church I like and become a member and get baptized. I try to stick to my Bible studies, though I have slacked some lately. Honestly, the present days are hard right now. I do workbooks and exercises where she can share her feelings in a safe space. All of this I do and then some. I quit porn the day I was confronted and have been sober from it since, over a year of sobriety, though I am struggling right now and circling the drain with our current state of the relationship. She ends up having some health problems and has to stop school, and I have been there for her through that. Hours sitting in the car outside the hospital and taking her to appointments, etc., standing by her side through sickness and health like I promised her from the start, and how I should have kept to it. She hasn't been there for me at this point in any regard for my struggles. She told me my sobriety and all that was on me. She wasn't going to be in my corner. So I have been doing it all on my own since day one, with help from some support groups. I keep doing these good things in hopes that I can earn forgiveness and show her my repentance, and because I want to change myself. As of the last time we talked, she tells me it has meant nothing, and I am years away from forgiveness. And this drags on for months. Then I started to think about how her story had some major concerns. She and my friend lied to me for over a year. They never told me about the alcohol. She was a sexual victim advocate and has had thousands of hours of training. Yet she didn't follow any of it the morning after or file any type of report, safe kit, etc. This isn't a person with zero training. I find out she left out the details of him picking her up and helping with an errand after the fact, which is weird. You don't ask someone who forced themselves on you for help the next day. She didn't want me to talk to him about it at all. I'm involved too, you know? She told me at a pinnacle time in our relationship when we were discussing honesty, and she did at a time where I wouldn't be able to be upset. It just seemed off. So I called him up and told him what she had told me, and he was concerned because it was a serious accusation. He denied everything. Said nothing happened and she was manipulating me. His wife seemed to be keyed in some too, but I could tell he was scared. Either from it being true or because it was out of the blue. Now today. Almost a year and a half has passed since I was confronted. My wife and I are currently separated and have settled on divorce at some point in the future because I am so tired and have told her that I can't keep up this marathon of never being enough. She continues to chastise me and she weaponizes my phone contact with her in regards to admin/finance matters and my kids. Now this. I am still not at ease with the strange details in regards to the barbecue. I called him the other day and asked him for the truth. I told him if he wanted to have his soul saved, he needed to be honest. I have never wronged him, and I promised him that if he came clean, I wouldn't lash out in anger, and we would leave it where it lies, and I wouldn't let it bleed into his career so he can still provide for his family. He then tells me a different story than hers. He says they got drunk and she manipulated him. He was in a bad spot in his marriage around the time, I remember that. She said all the things he needed to hear and confided in him about our problems. And then they made out on the couch downstairs. Then at one point she led him upstairs to the guest room, and they had sex, and she told him all the sweet things she tells me during the act and pillow talk. Then he left the next morning and came back for the errand. He sends me screenshots of all their conversations that are super chummy and friendly even after the act the following days, and shows call logs. You don't do those things with someone who forced themselves on you? He came clean with his wife like days after it. And they have been working through it since. He said my wife was fully engaged and on top of him at one point. I asked clear and concise questions to confirm it started downstairs, and she let him up, which he stands by. To clarify, she was in full control of the situation. Combined with the screenshots, and one of them has him asking her to calm his wife down, because she was upset they hung out, which she told him she would. The messages can be seen as double meaning when you know the full story. They were sneaky. You don't do that for someone who hurt you like she claims, right? You don't cover for him and lie to his wife? That is not what a normal person does, even if they want to move on from an event like that. I'm all but certain she had an affair with him like he claims. She blocked him on everything after he needed help calming his wife down. I assume there is a distance between them. So this is my problem. I'm at a loss. I have done so much freaking work and have fought so hard, and now things make more sense with why she pressed me so hard to admit something I haven't done. Like she was trying to justify her decision. The hurt knowing she is pushing this narrative and twisting the lie she has spun is worse than the betrayal. And timeline-wise, she did this after we married, before I left and messed up myself. Not that tick for tack really matters to me at this point. I'm just hurt that she has lied so deeply. He has no reason to tell me this. He could have kept his mouth shut and said nothing or sent me nothing, and I would have gotten nowhere like she obviously wants me to be. But he showed honesty when I asked for it, and seems to be trying to do the right thing for his family. What should I do? How do I process this? I'm so done with therapists. I need normal people looking at this and to tell me that I'm not crazy when I describe the soap opera that is our relationship and the twisted nature of it. I thought all of the self-discovery and healing I have been doing would mean something, and I would get somewhere. Is it all wasted? How do I confront her on this? I have put so much down on paper and taken leaps of faith for our relationship and put myself in a vulnerable spot she could use against me. I think with the messages I could combat it, but I'm not looking for a fight. I just want her to admit the truth, and how messed up it is. Right now I won't be back home for another few months. If I confront her on the phone, she has plenty of time to stack cards against me and my kids. She is that kind of person, at least I think she is capable of this deception. I want to talk to her parents so they hear this too. They are reasonable, so they can moderate it and be a witness. I just don't know how I can last another few months with this knowledge, and how she treats me currently. Thank you if you made it to the very end with this. I know it is crazy long.